This is video 3 in our series on how to implement a more conversation-based selling approach. In this video, we are going to explain how this approach can completely change what you do and say when you are cold calling. But before we talk about how to sell the conversation when cold calling, let's take a step back and look at what most salespeople do when they are cold calling, and that is selling the product. And what that usually looks like is a salesperson reaching out and saying, this is who I am, this is the company I'm with, this is what we sell, do you need what I sell? Are you interested in what I sell? Can we schedule a meeting to discuss what I sell? And when you look at that flow there, you might think, come on now, that's ridiculous. Salespeople don't do that when they're cold calling. I actually receive cold calls and cold emails every day, and I would say that about 95% or more follow this type of structure. And let me actually show you this filled in with my own product of SalesScripter. Hi, Tom. This is Michael Halper. I'm actually calling from SalesScripter. How are you doing today? By the way, most product selling salespeople ask the prospect, how are they doing today, in an attempt to soften the upcoming approach of them trying to sell their product and in their attempt to try to manufacture a little rapport right before they try to sell their product. Great. Well, we actually provide a sales training software platform. Do you need sales training software? What are your needs in the area of sales training software? Are you available for a call next week to discuss how our sales training software can help you? And when you see this structure here and the product selling approach, you can see this is not an optimum approach, because when I reach out and get a director of sales or a VP of sales on the phone, they are most likely not in the mode of researching and buying sales training software. When I talk about my product of sales training software, they most likely don't even know what I'm talking about, even though they have salespeople and they provide sales training to their salespeople. And there is likely room for improvement and challenges in the area of training their salespeople and getting the best performance out of their salespeople. When I reach out with a product selling approach to talk about sales training software, I am most likely creating a mismatch between what I'm wanting to talk about and where that prospect is mentally at that exact time. And it's that type of environment and situation that I'm creating that's going to lead to more objections, more rejection, more resistance. And not only does that decrease the odds of me being successful, it's going to make my job of selling and cold calling a lot more challenging, a lot more stressful, and a lot less fun. And we can completely change all of that by simply changing our focus from selling the product and focus more on trying to sell the conversation. And while it is easier to sell the conversation than it is to sell the product, I by no means am saying that it is completely easy to get the prospect to agree to talk more. But if our goal is to close the prospect on simply talking more and having a conversation, it is very clear what we need to do, and that is that we need to get good at finding a reason to talk more with the prospect. And there's one very clear thing that you can do to get good at finding a reason to talk more, and that is simply to ask the prospect good questions. You might agree with that 100%, but still not know what questions to ask. I'm going to show you two categories of questions that you can create for the product or service that you sell. And the first is to create a list of pain questions to see if the prospect has the pain points that you can help to resolve, minimize, or avoid. And these will be unique for the product that you sell. But to demonstrate this, here are some pain questions for the product of SalesScripter. How do you feel about the amount of leads your reps are generating? How do you feel about getting the most out of your sales reps? How do you feel about the amount of time it takes to get reps trained and ramped up and producing? How much of a priority is it for you to fix the underperforming reps on your team? How important is it for you to find ways to decrease sales staff turnover? These should be good questions to try to figure out how is the prospect doing in the area where SalesScripter can help. And the second category category of questions that you can create are what we refer to as current state questions. These are questions that help you to learn what the prospect is doing in the area where you have something to sell. Again, these will be unique for the product or service that you sell, but just to demonstrate what these might look like, here are current state questions for the product of SalesScripter. Do you provide any type of sales script or playbook to your reps? Do you use any type of sales methodology? Do you provide sales training to your staff? How many reps do you have? How long does it take to get reps ramped up, trained, and performing? Are you doing any type of cold outreach? What is your sales staff turnover rate? And having these questions will be a huge leap forward in you moving more towards a conversation-based selling approach for a couple key reasons. First of all, these questions are all very conversational, and they will help you to learn more about what is going on with the prospect and get the prospect talking more and engaged during your cold call. So these questions can really be the main centerpiece of your cold calls and of your cold call script. But we still need to improve our ability to open cold calls and create an opportunity to ask these questions. So before we get to asking our questions, we might open the cold call by saying something like, "Hey Tom, this is Michael Halper. I'm calling from SalesScripter. Have I caught you in the middle of anything?" By the way, I like to replace the product selling question of "How are you doing today?" with a more casual, familiar, informal, and conversational question of "Have I caught you in the middle of anything?" If the prospect says, "No, I'm fine," or "What is this in regards to?" then we can progress to opening the call with our value proposition by saying something like, "Well, the reason for the call is we help businesses to get the most out of the sales reps on their team." Then we can transition to doing a sales takeaway by saying something like, "But I'm not sure if you're a good fit or not with what we do. That's why I was calling with just a question or two. If I could ask you real quick." And then we transition to asking a couple of our questions. If you sell something that's more unique, where a prospect might not regularly buy what you sell or know what it is that you sell, like SalesScripter, it's usually good to start with your pain questions. If you sell something that's more commoditized, something that the prospect regularly purchases or already has, current state questions are usually good to lead with. But you can bounce between these two sets depending on how the conversation goes. And what you're looking for is you are looking to try to get a good response to one of your questions. A good response would be where you uncover that something's not working well, or there's room for improvement, or that something is just okay, or maybe even the prospect does not know the answer to your question or how something is going in a particular area. When you get an answer like that, that creates a justification for talking more, and you can use that justification for closing the prospect on talking more. But before you go for the close, share a few details about either your company or your product to build just a little bit of interest by saying something like, "Based on what you've shared so far, it might make sense for us to talk more because as I mentioned, I'm with SalesScripter and we actually provide a sales training platform that makes it easy for you to teach all of your reps the right things to say and ask when they're talking with prospects, and that will help them to generate more leads and get into more accounts." And after you share a few quick details about what it is that you sell, then you can go for the close by saying something like, "But I'm not sure if this is the best time to discuss this because I'm just calling you here out of the blue. Are you available for a brief call maybe next week where we can spend a little bit of time learning more about you and what's going on your side? And then based on that, I can share some examples of how we've helped other businesses to improve the performance out of the sales reps on their teams." And to be very clear, what we're doing here is that we are closing for talking more and having a conversation. We are not closing the prospect on the product by asking if they're interested or if they need what we sell. Now, we still might run into objections when we're closing for the conversation, but by shifting to selling the conversation instead of selling the product, we decrease the odds of facing these objections. And even if we do face an objection when we close for the conversation, we still have a way to respond to those objections and try to get around those objections, and we will discuss that in an upcoming video in this video series. But if you like that approach and you want to try to use that for the product or service that you sell, the first thing you might want to do is create your list of pain or current state questions that will provide a huge step forward with you trying to move towards a conversation-based selling approach. But in addition to that, you might want to create your value proposition. You might want to organize some really quick, powerful details about the product or service that you sell. And as you're creating all of this, we view each of those sets of talking points as building blocks. And once you have your building blocks for your sales message, you can then mix and match those building blocks to create your cold call script. And if you want help with creating your sales message and your building blocks for the product or service that you sell, we actually have a step-by-step sales message brainstorming process that will help you to create the optimum things to say and ask for the product or service that you sell. Here's an example of going through this process. Now, if you're looking at this and feeling intimidated, either that you'll be able to create this for what you sell, or you don't know if you'll have the energy and time to want to go through this, the good news is that our product of SalesScripter can create all of this for you. Actually, with our AI features, all you have to do is enter the product or service that you sell, and SalesScripter will do all of the work for you. It'll communicate with ChatGPT to create a list of features, differentiation, value proposition, pain points, pain questions, and current state questions to ask. Then the software will take all of those building blocks and create a whole library of sales scripts. This is the script that I just showed you that you can use for a conversation-based selling approach. The software will also display that cold call script in what we call our interactive view, which will allow you to more quickly and easily get to the key talking points that you want to discuss at the right time during a cold call. So hopefully that gives you some ideas for how to improve your cold calling efforts. In the next video in this video series, we will talk about how the conversation-based selling approach can change and improve your cold emailing efforts. And we look forward to seeing you there.